Thank you very much, and welcome to day 2 of Communicating for Safety 2017. I'm not going to give a long speech, as Paul covered that pretty extensively yesterday. I did want to reiterate a couple of points, though, before we bring up our first speaker of the day. Paul was right when he talked about the National Executive Board having your back, and we understand that there's a lot of concern and angst in the field about what the future holds about our professions. Throughout NATCA's 30-year history, and this is our 30-year anniversary of NATCA's existence this year, we have worked and succeeded on legislative issues with Democrat and Republican Congresses. We've worked with Democrat and Republican presidents and administrations. But our issues are truly bipartisan, and you could see that as we've been able to work our way through the swing that occurs in Washington, D.C. We are the true stewards of the national airspace system, and our vested interest in its safety and modernizing it and the hard work we do every day shows what a credible workforce we really are. We transcend all the politics, and they listen to what we take to them on a daily basis. So be advised, we are ready. We are prepared to take these issues head on, maneuver our way through all of it, and we want you, the hardworking men and women of the National Airspace System, to just remain focused and do the incredible, wonderful job that you do every day. So with that, it is my honor to bring up our first speaker. We are so pleased to have him with us here today. He was appointed chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board on March 16, 2015. He became a member of the board in August 2009 and subsequently designated vice chairman by President Barack Obama, where he served 3 consecutive terms as vice chairman. He served as acting chairman from April 26, 2014 until he was appointed as chairman. Before being appointed to the NTSB, he served as Deputy Director for Air Traffic Safety Oversight at the FAA and as FAA Assistant Administrator for System Safety. Prior to that, he was Deputy Administrator of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Member Hart is a licensed pilot with commercial, multi-engine, and instrument ratings. He holds a law degree from Harvard University and a master's and bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering from Princeton University. Member Hart's 2-year appointment as chairman expired last week on March 15, 2017. However, he continues to serve as a member through his 5-year term, which will expire on December 31st of this year. NATCA has really enjoyed and valued the positive working relationship we've had with Member Hart over the course of his career at the FAA and at the NTSB. Please join me in welcoming Member Hart to the stage.
Good morning. Thank you, Trish, for that very kind introduction. Keep that music going. I'm going to start dancing in a minute. So thanks to Paul for inviting me here. This is always a privilege and an honor to be here. We've developed a great working relationship over the years to our mutual benefit, and I have to say, compared to last time I did this, this is much bigger, and that's exciting. The only problem is, if it keeps getting bigger, I'm going to be wondering, well, who's out there actually controlling airplanes? But I'm sure you have that taken care of. So what I want to talk about is collaboration. We see that word all over the place. We see it everywhere we look, and that's exciting. And what I want to talk about is, does it really make a difference? What's the outcome? So we've heard a lot about the outcome on improving safety, on improving efficiency, improving productivity, improving effectiveness. Our lane is safety because we're accident investigators. So I want to do these remarks in the context of what we see as accident investigators on how collaboration helps to improve safety. So before I do that, let me talk about what the NTSB is for those of you who may not know. We are an independent federal agency that Congress created. This is actually our 50th anniversary. Congress created 50 years ago to investigate accidents in all modes of transportation. We even do pipelines. We showed up at a pipeline explosion and people said, what are you doing here? Because Congress wants us to investigate that too. So if anything moves and something goes wrong, that's what Congress created us for, is to investigate and find out why. So they created us to find the cause of the accident, not blame or liability. It's not about blame or liability, it's all about cause. What were the links in the chain that led to that mishap. And then, once we determine the links in the chain, we make recommendations to try to prevent that from happening again. So that's our primary product, is recommendations. What can we do to keep this from happening again? Now, another thing that Congress did was they specifically said, we want you, the NTSB, to look only at safety. We don't want you to do cost-benefit studies. We want you to look at safety. So in that role, we obviously have to have our finger on the pulse of economic reality. So for example, when we were first recommending ground proximity warning systems, and they were big and bulky and expensive and heavy, then we would recommend them for a 747, wouldn't recommend them for a Beech 1900, because you're not going to put this big, heavy, bulky, expensive thing on a Beech 1900. So we had our finger on the pulse of economic reality, but we didn't do third decimal place cost-benefit studies. So that's what Congress wanted us to do, is they wanted us to provide what would you do in an ideal safety world where safety is your only consideration. And of course, it never is your only consideration, but that's what Congress wanted us to bring to the table. If safety were your only consideration, what would you do? They also created us to be independent, and I give kudos to Congress for creating us the way they do, both politically independent and functionally independent. So the political independence comes primarily from the fact that we serve fixed terms. We are not, most presidential appointees are discretionary appointees. They serve at the pleasure of the president. We are not discretionary appointees. What a discretionary appointee, what that means in the real world is if you do something politically embarrassing, you're probably gone. And we've seen that in the last few weeks for sure. In my case, my term expires the end of 2017, so if I do something politically embarrassing, I'm just going to be a political embarrassment until the end of 2017. And that's intentional. The purpose of that is so that when we're investigating accidents, there won't be some player party in the accident, like, for example, the airline or the manufacturer or the pilots union or the controllers union, you guys, anybody. We can't have them, they will not be coming to me and saying, if you write this report in a way that's unfavorable to me, then I'm going to go to my buddy, the president, and have you thrown out. Well, that can't happen because I serve a fixed term. So that was a very important part of what Congress did to make us independent. So we have 5 members, each with 5-year terms, and one term expires at the end of each calendar year, and that was done so that a new president can't just do a wholesale replacement of everyone. And we also have a party balance requirement. So of the 5 members, only 3 can be of the president's party. So Congress did a lot to try to make us politically independent. And the purpose of that was so that we make our findings and our recommendations and our probable cause determination based on the facts that we see and not based on some backroom, smoke-filled room lobbying. And that was a very important part of making us independent. In addition to that, we are functionally independent. So that means we don't operate anything. Most regulated industries, when something goes wrong, the regulator is the investigator. But when that happens, we often find that things that the regulator does or doesn't do may be links in the chain to that mishap. And so if that's the case and the regulator is doing the investigation, are those links in the chain that were regulator created, are they going to appear in the investigation report? Well, maybe and maybe not. The point is, if we're doing it because we're independent, and this is no disrespect to the FAA, this is just human nature that the fish don't see the water, so the regulator is not as likely as we are to see the regulator's input that had a role in that accident. So we don't operate anything, we don't regulate anything, and that's how we are functionally independent. So that independence is very important, and that's why we have a world-class reputation for finding out what caused accidents and then making recommendations to prevent them from happening again. So before I start out, I want to give my personal kudos, because I'm a pilot, and I've probably talked to many of you in the course of flying all over the country. My experience with controllers is so universally positive, and I'm so sorry to miss the Archie League Awards, to hear about some of the accomplishments that so many of you do every day, and hear people who did it in such exemplary manner as to be entitled to the Archie League Award. I'm really sorry to be missing that, but my personal kudos, because as a pilot, I have nothing but positive regard. The controllers are always there when I needed them. In fact, I remember one time going from Dulles to Boston, passing over Baltimore, and the rain was as heavy as I had ever seen it. I'm IMC, I'm in the rain, it's as heavy as I've ever seen it, but there was no turbulence. So I had done my weather forecast, and I knew there wasn't any cumulo activity out there, so there wasn't turbulence, but it sure was a lot of rain, and I'm wondering whether that just quantity of rain appeared as red on on the controller's radar screen because they kept asking me, are you sure you want to be where you are? Are you sure you don't want us to take you around it? And I said, no, I'm doing fine because it's as smooth as glass. There's a whole lot of rain, but it's smooth as glass. And I so admired, so respected their desire to help me out, even without me asking for help. So kudos to all of you for what you do every day to move the number of airplanes you move every day and to do it safely. So my respect, and that's one of the many reasons why I'm so glad to have this opportunity to be here today and to work with Paul on a continuing basis. So why do we place such emphasis on collaboration? Well, here's where it started in the aviation industry. In the aviation industry, it started with commercial airlines being concerned because in the early 1990s, the accident rate had been coming down a long time for lots of good reasons. For example, introduction of jet engines. So jet engines are so much more reliable than piston engines that in itself created a quantum reduction in the accident rate. Simulators, that made it so possible to test pilots in airplanes and show them things you'd never want to show them in a real airplane, so if they ever really see it, oh yeah, I've been there, done that, I know exactly what to do because I saw it in the sim. So that had a quantum reduction in the accident rate. Automation has had an amazing effect in improving safety. So for all these technological advances, bringing down the accident rate wonderfully until the early 90s, and it was starting to get kind of stuck on a plateau. So then, meanwhile, the FAA is projecting double the volume of flying in the next 15 or 20 years. So little quick arithmetic says flat rate times double volume means that Joe Public is going to see twice as many accidents, twice as many smoking, burning airplanes on CNN in 15 or 20 years, and that basically scared the mess out of them. They said, that cannot happen, that is totally unacceptable, because they knew it was not helpful to go to Joe Public and say, hey, don't worry, the rate's real low. What Joe Public counts is the number of events, number of times they see smoking, burning airplanes on CNN. So that's when they did something totally out of the box, something that's never been done in any other industry before or since, and at an industry-wide level, they collaborated. They brought the airlines, the manufacturers, the pilots, the controllers, the airports, even the regulator, together to do four things. One is to identify what the potential problem areas were. Two is to prioritize them, because they quickly realized that they're going to identify more issues than they'll ever have resources to address, so they're going to have to get smart about which one of these is front burner to do it now, which one of them is going to have to go to the back burner. And then fix the ones that are front burner, and then evaluate whether those fixes are working without causing unintended consequences. And that's the out-of-the-box thinking. I've not seen any other industry do that before or since at an industry-wide level. So what happened as a result of that? This rate that was very low was considered quite good at the time, and a lot of people said it's probably never going to really get much lower than that. Well, it did get much lower than that. In fact, it went down by more than 80% in only 10 years from where it was stuck on a plateau. What an amazing accomplishment. That's what made me a big believer in collaboration, because I saw it firsthand in this very industry, and it's been a huge, huge success story. So in addition to improving safety, it also improved productivity. And that flew in the face of conventional wisdom, because conventional wisdom was you improve productivity, you're going to hurt safety. Improve safety, you're going to hurt productivity. They improved both of them at the same time. What a huge, huge win-win that was. And then, one of the problems in complex systems, a system as complex as our national airspace system, one of the problems in any complex system like that is when you make a change in one area that you're trying to fix, and all these systems are coupled together, which means that now an effect in this system is going to have an effect in all the other systems. If you do an input in this system, you're going to have outputs in lots of other systems because they're coupled together, and they're going to change in response to each other. So when that happens, the challenge is, how do you avoid unintended consequences? That's a huge challenge in making changes in complex systems. How do you avoid unintended consequences? But this collaboration did that, and my theory on that is because everybody at the table, they're there talking safety, but they're thinking everybody to whom these unintended consequences might occur is at the table. And that's why this process improves safety without hurting productivity. In fact, improves productivity and doesn't have unintended consequences. In addition to that, the bottom line is everybody has their eyes on the same prize. That's why it really works. So the moral is, if you're involved in the problem, you need to be involved in the solution. It's very simple. If you're involved in the problem, you need to be involved in the solution. So in this day and age of rapid technological advance, we know that the regulatory process is very, very slow for lots of reasons. The collaborative process can be nimble and keep up with all those amazing advances. So if this has been so successful to reduce that flat stuck accident rate by more than 80% in less than 10 years, why am I not seeing it elsewhere? Well, because it is actually very challenging to get people to collaborate for lots of reasons. So the first reason is just basic human nature. Human nature is, I'm okay, you're not. So all the players in here would say, hey, I got my act together. If you guys would get your act together, then come back and talk to me, and we'll see what we can do. So like I say, that's human nature. How many times have you heard people say, hey, I don't need the marriage counselor. You're the one who's got the problem. You go to the marriage counselor. I'm okay, you're not. So that's basic human nature to make people reluctant to participate in this effort in the first place. In addition to that, these players have very differing interests and sometimes even competing interests. So how are you going to get them to come and play in the sandbox together? Then there's the fact that nobody wants to bare their soul in front of the regulator. Again, not a criticism of the FAA, that's just human nature. Nobody wants to bare their soul in front of the regulator. I'm not going to tell them, I'm not going to show them my dirty laundry, because then they're going to use it against me. So the FAA, this is one of the key points of this, is that the FAA administrator at the time, David Hinson, was one of the people who originated this program, and he said, the solution to this problem of getting off this plateau is not a bigger stick for the regulator, it's not more regulations, it's how can we all work together to figure out how to make this complex system work better. So that was a challenge to get people to bare their soul in front of the FAA, and that's why the FAA had to back off and say, I'm not here for enforcement purposes, I'm here to learn so that we can figure out how to do it better. Meanwhile, the FAA, by the way, said, hey, I don't want to be part of this because this smells like a democracy, everybody vote, what do we want to do? This can't be a democracy because the law says I, the FAA, am in charge of this, so I'm the one who determines what happens and what doesn't happen, and they were afraid that this smacked of a democracy and took away their authority, but it didn't take away their authority. What it did was it enabled them to participate in a rich session of information sharing that couldn't have happened any other way, and so it's been a huge, huge, powerful success. The usual way it works is the regulator says, I see a problem out there, and here's what you guys need to do to fix this problem. So they put out a notice of proposed rulemaking saying, here's the problem, here's what you guys need to do to fix it. Then the industry says, hey, FAA, you don't fly airplanes, I don't like your identification of the problem, and frankly, the solution you're proposing is even worse. It's not going to improve our safety, and while it's not improving our safety, it's going to hurt our productivity. So I don't want to do it, I'm going to litigate against it, I'm going to do everything I can not to have to do it, and to the extent I absolutely have to do it, I'm going to do it minimally and begrudgingly. So that was an adversarial relationship. Now, it's changed the dynamic completely from adversarial to collaborative. That's the collaboration. Now, by the time something exits that collaboration pipeline, everybody's on board with it. They all have an ownership interest in it because with the normal regulatory process, put out the NPRM, you hear what A thinks, you hear what B thinks, you hear what C thinks. But the regulator never has a chance to hear what A thinks of what B and C think. So that collaborative relationship never happens in the normal regulatory mode. It happens when they're all around the table at the same time. So what that means is when something exits that pipeline, everybody's on board with it, they're willing to do it quickly, and not only that, but again, back to complex systems, it's very difficult to have, first time out of the gate, a solution that really works and handles all of the complications, but when everybody's on board with it, they're willing to tweak it. The regulatory process has no way to tweak. So the tweaking is crucial to the success of the collaborative process, and what it takes is everybody in their enlightened self-interest taking off their myopic, I'm here to get what's best for me thinking, and putting on their, I'm here to get what's best for the entire system, because if the system gets better, we all win. That's why it's a win-win. Everybody wins in the collaborative process. So that's a challenge. It's why aren't other people doing it, given how successful this has been? And I don't have a good answer to that, but keep up the good work as you are doing your collaboration, because that's what's making it safer, and it's making it safer while improving productivity, and you're reducing unintended consequences and all those benefits of collaboration. So let's talk about some of the specifics of NATCA collaboration. Start with runway incursions. Of course, the runway incursion accident, Tenerife had the most fatalities of any aviation accident in history, and those numbers were going down wonderfully for a while, but then started to turn around and go back up. Same thing with wrong runway and wrong airport landing. So these are very complex problems, and we're trying to get our hands around it, and kudos to NATCA for working collaboratively to try to address those problems. And also I want to thank both the FAA and NATCA for letting us participate through Dan Bartlett, who is here today, in the Runway Safety Council, because that is a wonderful opportunity for all of us to get the totality of the picture and work together to address these complex problems. So this is just one of many examples of collaboration that NATCA is involved in that have been working wonderfully. Let's look at the next one, PIREPs. If you've seen our display out in the exhibit area, we got a display there on PIREPs. Trying to get the needed weather information in the cockpit is a challenge. I remember as a pilot, I have to confess, you know, when I'm doing an instrument approach and I break out at 500 feet or whatever, I have to say, did I ever give a PIREP and say, you know, the clouds are 500 feet? Did I ever do that? I probably didn't, and that doesn't happen, unfortunately, very often. So that's a real challenge, and it's not only PIREPs, but then the whole weather in the cockpit issue is a huge challenge, and NATCA's participating extensively in the program in Alaska where they have fewer weather reporting stations. How can we take advantage of all the people who are out there in this weather and learn from it so that we can give better weather information to the pilots? So that's been a big challenge, and so as a result of that, last year in June we had a PIREP forum, and NATCA played a big role in that, and I want to thank NATCA for playing such a big role in how can we better collect and disseminate weather information to make sure that everybody knows what's happening. And it's both encouraging pilots to report it more, like I probably didn't do enough when I was flying. It's encouraged controller to ask for it. If there's a situation where the weather could be an issue, ask for it from time to time and just find out what pilots are experiencing, because that's the most reliable source you're ever going to get is what's actually happening at the time. Now, we know one of the issues that they're facing is that pilots are often afraid to report it, because if I'm reporting icing and I'm in an airplane that's not ice certified, then I'm thinking, I wonder if the FAA is going to use this against me to say, what were you doing in that area in an airplane that's not icing certified? So there are some of those issues, and the FAA is working with us to try to deal with that, recognizing that the objective we want is for people to have that information in the cockpit so that they can respond to it better. So thank you very much, NATCA, for working with us and for your continued collaboration, as we address this issue further, and the bigger weather issues is going to be crucial to the success of those programs. Then there's NextGen. So I can't tell you how many times I've seen big press splash about, wow, new equipment for the controllers. Then the next day, I'd see another big press splash about how controllers didn't like it. So that made me wonder, wait a minute, why is this new thing for controllers coming out there, and then they tell me they don't like it? Well, come to find out, the reason is because they weren't involved in the design phase. They weren't consulted in, you're the end user of this product, you're going to have to do this. What do you think of the way we do this? So the collaboration of the end user, in your case NATCA for air traffic control equipment, is so crucial. And just to look at the manufacturing industry, the airplane manufacturers a long time ago learned that after they would send an airplane, a newly manufactured airplane out the hangar, and the pilots would say, I don't like this, I don't like that, they learned, well, you know what, maybe we'd build a better airplane if we asked the pilots early on, what do you think we ought to do in this airplane? And that's one of the reasons the airplanes are becoming so much better, because they consult with the end users, the pilots, early on in the design phase. By the same token, when you're looking at equipment manufactured for you or processes made for you, you should be involved early on in that process to make sure that it works for you. So two examples of among many of new technologies that are coming along that, because of NATCA participation, NATCA collaboration, work better. ERAM is one that was kind of stuck in the mud until NATCA showed up and helped it through. And Datacom. What an amazing story that is, to now have digital transmission of clearances instead of all the voice traffic. So there are so many opportunities to make it better, and NATCA collaboration is helping with all of that. Then there's the new guys who are coming into the airspace. So UAS, I feel sorry for the FAA because that's eating their lunch, because there are so many of them out there, and what do we do about that? Commercial space launches, we investigated one of the commercial space launches. We investigate the ones that are human-occupied space launches. We also, SpaceX asked us to investigate one of their accidents, so that was really a privilege for us to be asked by SpaceX to look at one of their accidents, especially given the fact that that occurred after they had a Tesla crash, and Elon Musk nonetheless asked us to come and help us with their SpaceX. So when I see that as the chairman, former chairman, a week ago I would have been chairman, when I see that as former chairman, I'm so proud of our guys and do such good work that someone that we're investigating at the time for a Tesla crash that happened in Florida asks us to come and help with SpaceX. What a huge compliment that is. I love it. They do all the work. I get all the credit. What's not to like? So that is one where we're seeing that these new NASA instruments, there's going to be a huge impact on the airspace, and that means you guys need to be involved in how that's going to work. So the continued collaboration by you is crucial to that, and kudos to Paul for seeing the importance of that and for making sure that you guys are involved in that. And then there are future examples that we can see coming, remote towers. Most of my flying I did from Leesburg, and that's one that's a site for the remote tower. I'm very fascinated to see where that can go and how that can help improve efficiency in the airspace. Space-based ADS-B, another one that is coming along, and it's running into bumps in the road. We know that, but there are a lot of potential opportunities there. So this is exciting, and the collaboration is a crucial part of this whole process. So here's another crucial part of it, is allowing all the players to understand the roles of all the other players in the process. And that's why I think it's very important for controllers to spend some flight deck time to see. Every time I flew, when I was at the FAA, I was on their short list of standby pilots that they needed to fly their biz jets. They have a fleet of biz jets that they keep at National Airport to fly all kinds of people everywhere, including the NTSB to accidents. So whenever they had more missions and they had full-time type-rated pilots, they would come to their short list of people who were SIC rated like me. And I have to tell you, every time, whenever I had some spare seats, I would ask some people from my office who were controllers to go up with me so that they could see what life is like at the other end of the radio. And that was fascinating. I got such positive feedback from them. Every time I took controllers up, they loved it because they said, I've never seen what life is like at the other end of the radio. And likewise, the pilots need to visit your facility so they can see, likewise, what's at the other end of the radio. And then within your facilities, you got the tower, and you got the en-route facilities, you got the TRACONs, and to allow controllers to see what happens in their other types of facilities so they can see what's happening in that place where they're handing off to me or where I'm handing off to them. And so they can actually have an up-close and personal look at how that works, so that the more you understand each other's perspectives, the more successfully this program can work. Here's what I'd like to, before I close, like to make a pitch that we can play a role in this collaboration as well. So we have investigated for decades many accidents involving introduction of new technologies, involving introduction of automation, increasing automation. And we've seen lots of things that went wrong with introduction of new technologies, introduction of increasing automation. That can help inform the process as we're trying to do it here. That can help inform the process of these new technologies and this increasing automation so that we can avoid the bumps in the road that we know exist from our decades of investigation experience. So I would ask you, I'm happy that the extent to which you're already including us, I would ask you to continue including us in that collaboration because we bring a lot to the table in terms of past experience as we bring in advanced technologies and as we look at more automation. So please keep us in mind. We're happy to play that role because we are not just there after the crash, we can also be there. We're an advisor to CAS, for example, because they learn a lot from our lessons learned that we bring to the table when CAS is deciding what to do next. And likewise, we can do the same thing in this context. So please keep us in mind. When you're doing that, our staff is eager to continue playing a role with all of you in that. So, closing up, collaboration is crucial to improving complex systems successfully, especially in this day and age of rapidly advancing technologies. So the response is more nimble, the response is quicker, the response is more effective, the response is more efficient. All those benefits from collaboration. So kudos to all of you at NATCA for participating in the various collaborative efforts that are in place to improve the NAS, and please call on us because our investigation experience can be very, very helpful to that effort. So thanks again, Paul, for inviting me. This has been an amazing experience, and I'm excited to see how big this is getting and how the growth continues, and that's a positive sign because it shows, A, how committed all of you are to continue improving throughput and safety and efficiency, and B, the leadership. It shows the leadership and how they realize how important it is to get so many of you involved to come and exchange notes and learn from each other and work with each other to make the sky safer. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here. I look forward to working with you.